I'm not even going to pretend like I have an intro for this video because like the truth is we were just streaming on Sunday, doing our Sunday storytelling stream over at MrRipper stream over on the Twitch box. Come follow us so that we can make affiliate and Rip Daddy can play video games more with me because I'm lonely. Posted by you/OriginalUserAccount, I bring you Roll for Suppository, an odd fight against divine beings. This is the story of how a player rolled consecutive disastrous rolls only to succeed with a clutch shot in the end. So a little backstory before we move on to the main part. Apologies in advance for how long the backstory is and how long the post is in general. Well, guess what, bub? Because the post is so long, it gets its own video. Sorry. I had created what was meant to be a one-shot for Halloween that, due to various circumstances, making too much content, moving house, and forgetting that my players like to dick around, had become a mini side campaign. The side campaign takes place in modern day, 2019, in a small American desert town. Think Night Vale in terms of style. For this one shot, I had created my own homebrew system, which was similar to 5th edition in terms of roles, but completely homebrewed stats and classes, with each character having various special abilities based on which tier they had unlocked. Tiers would be unlocked as the plot progressed and they regained their memories. KOs worked slightly different to 5th edition too. Saving throws were still a thing, but could only be rolled by players that still had health, i.e. they saved their companions, with it becoming harder each time, as the main campaign is their first ever campaign. I've been a bit lax in terms of killing them off, so I thought that the best way to start introducing permadeath would be in a one-shot side campaign, as I'm going to start being less lax in the main campaign when we resume. The basic premise was that as children they had encountered various supernatural entities and saved their town numerous times, developing abilities as they did so. The basic premise was that as children they had encountered various supernatural entities and saved their town numerous times, developing abilities as they did so. On one of their adventures at Halloween, one of their friends disappeared, and presuming him dead, the group disbanded. Almost 20 years had passed, and they had forgotten most of their adventures and had moved away, but when they received a letter from their presumed dead friend, they all returned back to the town and met up with him, intent on figuring out what had happened all those years ago. The players had the following characters and powers. Billy, an inventive mechanic with control of elements. Think Aang from Avatar. Patrick, a sadistic tech whiz with the ability to conjure illusions, make memories tangible, and able to mimic people and their abilities. Gus, an inquisitive journalist with the ability to break beyond normal human barriers and move at amazing speeds and strength. A mix between Might Guy and Izuku Midoriya. Seth, a portly chain-smoking doctor with the ability to conjure spirit weapons at will, similar to Noctis from Final Fantasy XV. The story was meant to progress so that their friend Sean and the rest of the town would disappear, and they would try to find him once more, going to various places in the process and stumbling across a larger, more sinister plot. Of course, this being my group, this didn't happen. They ignored the prompts and instead headed to where Sean had initially disappeared, prompting some quick DM bullshit as I threw together an alternate plotline and a new battle map in the few days between sessions. During this little detour, the group was continually foiled by rollers in a funhouse. This led to Seth taking off his shirt and pouring energy drink on himself to make himself more slippery. Met a friendly lich that they had fought decades ago, and also included Gus being KO'd after touching a ball of divine light, burning his arm in the process, and then had it fly into his face, knocking him out and leaving him with a severely burned face. Despite this, they managed to make the townspeople reappear, but they were all seemingly in a trance, heading towards a newly appeared cathedral. Anyway, after all of this, we had finally got back on track with them making their way to the cathedral, with Gus now hooked on painkillers. I had set the scene, creating a vision of an apocalyptic scenario unfolding as they were driven to their destination. Brainwashed citizens destroying those that resisted. Corrupted divine beings based on archons, shepherding them around and attempting to destroy our heroes, fires everywhere, explosions, etc. Honestly, that bit of scene setting was my favorite part, as I could hear my players becoming more unsettled and worried as it went on, creating a truly hopeless atmosphere, one where they were fighting against the tide but had to try anyway. They reached the outside of the cathedral and were confronted by two divines, Kochiel, based on an Excinder Archon, and Tamiel, based on a Legion Archon. Talks soon devolved, and it became obvious that they would be drawn into combat once more, especially after Patrick took on Kochiel's form, abilities and all. which enraged the proud and arrogant Tamiel. It's here that this particular story actually begins. So our players roll initiative, and of course they all roll low, so the two divines are first to attack. Now, as a DM, when my players are facing boss-like enemies, I will write out a battle plan for these enemies so as to fit their character, and will often have their first attack be relatively powerful. Powerful enough to set the scene and show them they need to take this seriously, but not powerful enough to do mass amounts of damage. So with this in mind, I had Cochiel cast Firestorm. As the name suggests, Firestorm creates a storm of flames that can surround players. Up to 10 cubes as long as they are perpendicular, and on a failed dex check, agility in this system, will cause 7d10 fire damage. Cochiel rises into the sky and creates a vortex of flames around them. Everyone rolls their checks except Patrick, as he is immune due to taking Cochiel's form. And of course, they all fail. Gus, however, with his first roll of the night, gets a nat 1. In this system, a nat 20 on an attack roll or a nat 1 on a saving throw results in double damage. I roll 40 damage, 80 for Gus. The fire clears and Gus is left unconscious for the second time, which really unnerves the players. Next up is Seth, his brother, who tries mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but fails his first roll. 2 attempts left. As this is happening, both Billy and Patrick are now taking on Tamiel, Billy trying to shoot him and failing, and Patrick using Cochiel's trick against him. He succeeds, and as Tamiel tries to escape the flames, he is engulfed, also rolling a nat 1, and drops to the floor. Still alive, but damaged. Tamiel then engages with Patrick, as Patrick flashes him the biggest shit-eating grin he can muster. He manages to cut Patrick, but due to his defense, he barely scratches him. Cochiel, seeing Seth try to revive his brother, then tries to prevent this from happening by slashing at the doctor, who takes 23 damage like a champ, still protecting his brother. Blood spurting from the wound and immediately cauterizing due to the fire damage from Cochiel's flame sword. It is at this point that the chat playing Seth has a brilliant idea. Rather than rolling a saving throw, he would instead use painkillers to try and bring him back from the brink. I'm not too sure about this because 1, this would circumvent saving throws and might be used to cheese them later on with other players, and 2, Gus was unconscious. How would he swallow them for them to take effect? So I make a deal. If he can convince me as to how it would work, I would allow it, as his character is a doctor. He takes a few seconds to think and says he's unsure of how Gus could swallow the pills. Pauses again and then comes out with, he doesn't have to swallow it. My face falls as I realize what he intends to do. What do you do? F it. Pants down. It's going up. I don't know what you roll for this. Out of everything I've prepped for, rolling for a painkiller suppository up your brother's arse isn't something I planned for. Fuck it, roll me a cool check. In this system, cool checks are used for situations where players need to keep their nerve, medical situations and such. Thanks to his modifier, he rolls an 18. Epic music is swelling on the soundtrack as this portly doctor, who is being wailed on by a mute divine being cloaked in flames, pulls down his brother's pants and lodges a painkiller up his rectum. With this success, he brings Gus back, though in the context of the game, I say that it's the shock that brings him back, as the painkiller would not be immediately absorbed into his bloodstream. Battered, but conscious. With Gus now standing again, the fight continues on, with it generally going back and forth between the players and the divines, each side dealing relatively decent damage. During this, Billy, using his earth manipulation, manages to trap Tamiel, which in turn makes it easier for Patrick to keep dealing damage to him with his flamed sword before Tamiel manages to break free using teleport, reappearing in front of Gus, who has just activated his uncanny potential, increasing his strength and agility, as well as allowing access to his other abilities that rely on this. Seth and Cochiel continue their fight, with Cochiel dealing quite a fair amount of damage to Seth with his sword. Seth in retaliation summons a rapier, but mishandles it and accidentally launches it into a nearby bench. He rolled a nat 1 while summoning. More attacks are attempted, with Billy failing to conjure an air attack, and Patrick continuing his assault on Tamiel, taking the heat off of Gus and taking Tamiel to death's door. Gus then attempts to use an ability called Lightning Leap, a homebrew ability that allows the user to travel at extreme speed and attack a target. On success, damage is calculated by their base damage rolled times a multiplier based on distance from the target. Unfortunately, he misses, but the force of his attack whips up the ash behind Tamiel, frightening him. As the fight continues to rage, Tamiel, damaged but still arrogant as ever, declares that whilst Patrick may have taken Cochiel's form, it is pointless, as Cochiel has never beaten him in a sparring match. But before he can finish his sentence, Patrick stabs the divine through the throat and sets him ablaze, finally killing his foe. Seeing his friend fall, Cochiel's flames turn blue, Before the fight, I had decided that if one of them fell before the other, the surviving one would become stronger, like a Phase 2 section. And Gus, once again, tries his lightning leap. He swings his foot, appearing in front of Cochiel instantly, but instead of hitting Cochiel's body, he instead hits his bright blue burning wings, inflicting a fair amount of damage once more. During Cochiel's next attack, Gus, using his reaction, activates Uncanny Reflexes, which allows Gus to move someone out of harm's way on success as a reaction. He is finally successful and in an instant maneuvers in front of Patrick and manages to knock Cochiel's attack away. Seth takes advantage of this and uses his newly regained rapier to cut across the Divine's chest, causing pure white blood to stain the floor. As the fight continues, everyone manages to deal damage to Cochiel, the most wince-inducing being Patrick attempting to bisect Cochiel from the groin, with the exception of Gus, who continually flubs all of his attacks. He tries to use air cannon, punches so powerful the air pressure behind them causes a gust of wind, damaging Patrick, who is in the path, as well as Cochiel. Nat 1 for damage. Cochiel uses Scorching Ray on Seth, and wishing to return the favor for saving him, Gus uses Uncanny Reflexes again. Nat 1. He takes the full brunt of the damage and is once again on death's door. Luckily for the group, on Cochiel's next turn, he gets himself a Nat 1 and deals a large amount of damage, leaving him in a similar state to Gus. It's finally Gus's turn again. He barely has any health left. If he goes down again, it's almost certain death for him. A third KO means they have to make 3 saving throws in a row. His strength is all but gone at this point. He goes quiet for a second. I turn him towards me, and I just flick him on the head, using the last of my strength and speed as a form of a punch. Roll me melee. Nat 20. The table goes quiet as Gus gets his first Nat 20 of the session. Roll damage. Max damage. Bloody and bruised, barely able to stand anymore, Gus whips Cochiel around, and as the Divine meets his gaze, Gus musters the last of his strength and flicks Cochiel between his eyes. There's a sickening cracking noise as he is flung 20 feet backwards and lands in a crumpled heap in front of the cathedral, dead. At this point, Gus collapses to the floor before guzzling down a worrying amount of painkillers. And that is the story of how arguably the most powerful player in the group almost died immediately, rolled a string of bad rolls and Nat 1s, almost killing himself again in the process, only to kill a literal divine being with a flick of his finger. The group is almost at the end of this side campaign, but given that Gus has KO'd twice now, I can see him going down for good against the big bad evil guy. So that leaves us with an outro, which I also didn't write because, again, I just saw this story and wanted to read it. If you have an amazing story that you would like to share with our community, please consider doing so on our official subreddit, where our community is the most likely to see it. We get most of the videos that we do on this channel from our subreddit, and this one is no exception. Original User Account, thank you so much for being a part of our community, and thank you for sharing your amazing story with us. I saw the title and I was just like, okay, this is going to be something. And it was, and I was not disappointed. So thank you very much for that. If you're a DM or a player looking for a group, maybe you want to check out MrRipper's Group Finder Discord server. Maybe there's 2,700 members and maybe people are finding groups every day. I don't know. I just work here. If you love me and you want me to be happy, feel free to check out my TikTok. And if you want to hang out with us as we play Dungeons and Dragons, check out our Twitch channel, Fire and Dice. But if you're just here for the stories, we actually almost read this one on one of the Sunday streams, but we decided not to because it deserved its own video. So come share your stories with us on Sundays. Share them to the subreddit, post them in chat. We just want to hang out. We want to read stories with you and have a little Sunday fun day for the crew. So it'd be great to see you there. You can check out our Twitch channel, MrRipper Stream, where every Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. GMT, we go live and we read stories off of the subreddit and hang out with chat. And chat sends us their stories sometimes from the subreddit. So come join us. It's a good time. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please sub for Nat 20s. Ring the bell for advantage on your next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. We love you so much here at Rip Daddy's house. Thank you, and we will see you in a couple days.